You don't want none! You don't want none!
What's going on, ACC football family? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel, and welcome to the show's weekly ACC preview and prediction show where I briefly talk about the slate of ACC games that are coming up this week. Now, somebody might say, Russ, why in the world should we give two rips what you stink and have to say? Well, my answer would be I did just pick the Georgia Tech upset over Florida State, and I think that I was the only non-Georgia Tech fan, aside from that dude Seamus on College Game Day, that had the cojones to put his stinking name and face to it. Not to mention, I got the point spread correct. Dang near got the actual score correct. 24-21, as opposed to my prediction of 27-24. So there's that. So do me a favor, man. Like the video, subscribe to the stinking channel, share this with your ACC buddies. It's not every day you're going to be able to get to hang out with a level-headed college football junkie. There's a lot of stinking clowns out there. I think we all know that. I'm just a regular dude that knows a little bit of football. Plus, I'm a perfect 2-0 right now. So let's see if I can keep this ball rolling. Now, we have 3 days of ACC football this week, so there's a ton to be excited about. And it all starts with little bro out in Raleigh. And look, disclaimer here. I care about my win prediction percentage, okay? So my picks will be emotionless based. But if you are a State fan, puke, or a who from Whoville, I'm going to give you some crap, but it's all in fun. Kind of. So let's get into this, man. First game on the slate, Western Carolina Catamounts are going to visit the number 24 NC State Wolf Sack. The Catamounts visit Raleigh to take on the Wolf Sack, and what many clad in red are saying, this is our year. Grayson McCall comes over from Coastal Carolina, and many are saying that this dude is the best to play in Raleigh, resume-wise, in a stinking while. Now, McCall doesn't have a huge arm, but he is accurate with the football, and he will have plenty of options to go to with KC Concepcion, Dakari Collins, and UConn transfer Justin Joly. Now, he's got a reliable back in the backfield also with Jordan Waters coming over from Puke to head up the rushing game, and State should once again have a pretty good offensive line. The offense definitely has the potential to be one of the best, okay, that it's fielded in a long time. Now, the question for me is, how does that defense operate after Dale Doback went to the NFL last year? I know State fans. I know you're like, dude, how many times are you going to do the Dale Doback joke? Okay, all right. Next week, it's off limits. I'm done, okay? Also gone is State's number 2 tackler and Jayon Scott. That's 212 tackles that need to be replaced in the State defense. Davin Vann will be tough again for the Pack, and I think the defense will still be pretty good, but I doubt it'll reach the heights of last season. All that's really stinking irrelevant is the Sack host WCU, who went 7-4 out of the Southern Conference in the FCS last year. We're not going to belabor this. State should be pretty good this year. They're at home. ESPN matchup indicator gives them a 99% chance of beating the Catamounts, and they are currently 33-point favorites as of the time of this video. Give me Wolfie 45, Western Carolina 17. Moving on, North Carolina A&T at the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Now, the Deacs host the Aggies Thursday night at 7 p.m. on ACC Extra, and they look to bounce back from a down year under head coach Dave Clawson. Now, Coach Clawson has been known to do more with less, but even he could not outwit the inconsistent quarterback play from the team last year. In steps Hank Backmeyer, who is 25 stinking years old, bro. That's a senior citizen in college football. Now, Hank played at Boise State and Louisiana Tech before transferring over to Wake Forest. Wake Forest scored 574 points in 2021. That's with Sam Hartman, right? Last year, they scored 243 points. That is stinking half of the production, and it will be him or senior Michael Kern that needs to spearhead this offense again. They'll get a great warm-up game as the Aggies went an abysmal 1-10 last year, 0-8 in their conference. The ESPN matchup indicator gives the Deacs a 90.1% chance at beating A&T, and I think they get it done, obviously. Might not be pretty, but give the Deacs 38-10 over the Aggies. We'll give them the nod. They get the job done. Moving on to the North Carolina game, we're going to blow over UNC versus Minnesota because I've already given an extended preview of that game. So make sure you go out and check out that video. But for scorekeeping purposes and for the sake of transparency, I have the Heels going up to Minnesota and getting a W in a close one, 24-20. Make sure you go check out that stinking video. Next up, first game Friday night, Elon Phoenix go to Durham to take on the Puke Blue Devils. The Manny Diaz and Malik Murphy show starts as Puke prepares for life after Riley Leonard on Friday night, 7:30 on the ACC network. He saw the writing on the wall, and he bolted for Notre Dame, which the dude was super overhyped anyway. Duke loses Jordan Waters also to the Wolfies, but they do return Jaquez Moore at running back and wide receiver Jordan Moore, who grabbed 62 catches for 8 touchdowns last year. Now, Puke also lost all 4 starters on the defensive line to either NFL graduation or the portal, so they will definitely be looking to replace some of those guys up front. That's going to be the issue, is the trenches. But they shouldn't have too much of a problem against an Elon team that went 6-5 last year and competes at a lower level of football. So yes, even Puke should handle business against these guys, and they will. ESPN matchup indicator gives Satan a 93.8% chance at beating the Phoenix, and I would tend to agree with that number. I'll take Duke 35, Elon 13 in Manny's debut, and maybe it's not so pretty at times. And for the Friday night game, 10:30 on ESPN. Good night. That's the terrible thing about having these West Coast teams. You got to wait until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to find out what's going on. Fortunately, Stanford is not supposed to be really in the scheme of things. They're not going to be some juggernaut this year, so I don't have to stay up too late. But Texas Christian visits the Stanford Cardinal up in Cali. Now, TCU is 2 years removed from a horrible thrashing in the national championship game at the hands of the Georgia Bulldogs. And then they follow that up with an embarrassing loss to the Deion Sanders show to open the season last year. Sophomore Josh Hoover will probably take the reins at quarterback after posting 2,200 yards and 15 touchdowns last season. He does have fleet-footed Cam Cook to hand the ball to in the backfield, along with Alabama transfer Trey Sanders. And TCU should be pretty good on the offensive line as they've replenished a lot of guys with some talented dudes from the transfer portal. Now, the defense, however, was atrocious. Atrocious last year. They could not stop the run to save their stinking lives. They'll lean on transfers Caleb Elarmzor coming over from Cal in the middle, along with Devion Deal from Tulane to help stop the run with my man Nabdi Obiozor. Now, Stanford, on the other hand, was inconsistent last year. They played tough at the tail end of the season while battling it out with Oregon State, almost stinking beating Arizona, and then they stunned Colorado. Quarterback Ashton Daniels threw for 396 yards that game. 294 of that went to Elick Ayomanor. So they have some guys on the outside. The biggest issues with Stanford were in the trenches, where they were just unable to keep pockets clean consistently. The defense was also absolutely abysmal. It's like a battle of abysmal defenses. Stanford's defense ranked 129th in the country in total and scoring defense. And just for reference sake, there's only 133 teams in the nation at this level. So they will not be able to clean it up fast enough against Texas Christian. The ESPN matchup indicator gives the Frogs a 57.4% chance percent chance at beating the Cardinal, and they are currently 9-point favorites at the time of this video. I think this one's a little bit closer than the experts think, but TCU gets it done 31-28, Texas Christian. Up next, we got a stinking barn burner. Clemson visits the Georgia Bulldogs at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the ATL for the Aflac kickoff. The Tigers return Cade Klubnik. Phil Maffa also returns as one of the best backs in the conference, and he no longer has to share the load with Will Shipley, which should only help the Tigers. So at 6'1", 225 pounds, not many people want to meet that guy in the stinking hole, especially when he gets downhill. The question will be, what kind of legitimate push can the Tigers generate against one of the most talented, all right, let's not kid ourselves, the most talented team in the country? Clemson has also got to replace multiple starters on the defensive side of the football. However, linebacker Barrett Carter, safety RJ Mickens, those guys are back. The defense should be pretty legit once again, but this is going to be a stiff test for sure. Georgia returns Carson Beck under center along with receivers Dominic Lovett, Arian Smith, Miami transfer Kobe Young, and Florida transfer Trevor Etienne. Still kind of up in the air whether Trevor is going to be able to play because of his recent debacle with the DUI ordeal a couple of months back. But Georgia also brings back 4 starters on the offensive line, so be prepared for that. Now, let's just say Georgia's defense is going to be NFL light. Clemson is a talented team, but Georgia is just on a stinking different level from everyone. The ESPN matchup predictor gives Georgia an 82.4% chance of beating the Tigers, and they are currently 13.5-point favorites. Clemson is going to have a tough time generating offense, and Georgia shows how dominant they truly are. They beat the Tigers 34-20. That's right, they put up 34 stinking points against that that Clemson defense. Up next, we got the Virginia Tech Hokies visiting the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, I'm really not too sure what all the Virginia Tech hype is about personally. Yes, Kyron Drones returns, and everyone's raving about this guy. He had 22 touchdowns in 11 games, and you would think that Vic's doppelganger just walked into Blacksburg. I guess when you've been down bad for a while, even a serviceable guy can get you all stinking hot and bothered. I just don't see what all the fuss is about necessarily. Bashal Tutton is back, who rushed for 863 yards, 10 touchdowns, along with some help in the receiver room with Ollie Jennings, Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, and Stephen Gosnell. The offensive line is really going to be the biggest question mark for this Virginia Tech team. Now, the Hokies finished the season ranked top 20 in defense for the first time in it seems like forever. Dorian Strong, Manzor Delaney, they're one of the best corner duos in the conference, and they also returned some guys up front that rank second in the ACC in sacks with 39. Now, Vanderbilt brings in New Mexico State's Tim Beck to revamp the offense after underachieving greatly in 2023. Now, Beck is going to look to run some type of option-style offense, which should assist with the rush game, especially after Vandy lost their top 4 receivers to the transfer portal last year. Head coach Clark Lee will take over the DC duties that have been nightmarish for Vandy over the past couple of years. Now, the ESPN matchup indicator gives the Virginia Tech Hokies a 57.7% chance of beating Vandy, and they are currently 13-point favorites. I think the Hokies handle business out in Tennessee 35-13. Give me the Hokies not only to win, but to cover and to be pretty good. Next, we got Austin Peay, the Governors, at the Louisville Cardinals. Austin Peay went 9-3 last year out of the Ohio Valley Conference. They get to visit the Texas Tech transfer Tyler Show, who should be an even better upgrade than Jake Plummer was last year for Louisville. He gets to throw to Colin Lacey out of South Alabama, Ja'Cory Brooks out of Alabama, and tight end Mark Redmond transfers from San Diego State. But the pass pro is going to have to improve if they're going to have long-term success. The defense will be good, although it's going to be hard to duplicate the success of 2023, where they led the ACC in rush defense and red zone defense. Now, Ashton Jalot comes back from an 11-sack season along with transfer tackle Stor Griffith from Harvard and Jordan Gerard from Florida International. Louisville will also once again field a really good secondary. So really good warm-up game against a decent lower-level competition. ESPN matchup indicator still gives Louisville a 97.3 chance of beating the Govs, and I like them to do just that. Give me the Cards over the Govs, 41-21. Next, we got the Kent State Golden Flashes visiting the Pittsburgh Panthers. Now, Kent State was really bad last year. They went 1-11 last year under head coach Kenny Burns, but they decided to bring him back anyway. Quarterback Tommy Ulatowski played in 10 games last year. He had 7 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions, including a pair of 200-yard games to start the season. But the issue was he only completed 50% of his passes. Now, Gavin Garcia returned to rush for 544 yards and 2 touchdowns. He will share time with Kansas transfer Kai Thomas, who played for Kenny Burns at Minnesota back in 2021. Cryshawn McCray and Luke Floria, they were all MAC receivers. And the defense is going to have some returning guys back as well. But how good can they truly be coming off of a 1-11 season? Now, the Panthers, on the other hand, just announced that Nate Yarnell and Alabama transfer Eli Holstein will both play in this football game. So it looks like Pitt still doesn't know who their guy is. Now, Kenyatta Mumpfield is back, who led the team with 44 catches and 5 scores. Gavin Bartholomew is also back, who's one of the better tight ends in the conference. And then the Pitt defense was stung pretty bad in the transfer portal with Solomon Shields and Bengali Kamara leaving. They also lost Dayon Hayes and Samuel Okunlolo to Colorado. And, the real question is can the guys that are coming in be effective behind those dudes? They won't struggle too much in this one. The ESPN matchup indicator gives the Panthers a 92.9% chance of beating the Flashes, and they are currently 24-point favorites. I'll take Pitt 38-17 over the Golden Flashes. Next up, we got a stinking really good one right here, man, and I have really gone back and forth in this football game. The number 19 Miami Hurricanes take on the Florida Gators in the swamp, bro. The Canes head up to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators in what is sure to be a statement game for both of these programs. Now, Billy Napier's seat is getting a little hot, bro. He started 11-14 in his 2 years, and he just missed a bowl game last year. On the other hand, Mario Cristobal owned the transfer portal, and he really seems to have patched together a good product. The question is, how does Cam Ward and the rest of this patchwork football team gel, and how quickly can they put it together? Now, Florida Gator Graham Mertz finished last season with 20 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. Eugene Wilson III will become Mertz's go-to guy, and they have to replace the departed Trevor Etienne to Georgia. How the heck do you go from Georgia to Florida or Florida to Georgia? It's a stinking crazy world that we're living in, man. Montrell Johnson Jr. will be the dude now who lacks the explosiveness, but is still a very effective back. The defense returns some studs. Jordan Castell, defensive line, Kelby Collins, and TJ Searcy. Also, Jason Marshall Jr. and Devin Moore are back after an injury-filled season last year. So Florida's defense should be just fine. Miami, on the other hand, obviously brings in highly sought-after quarterback Cam Ward and Damian Martinez from Oregon State. Well, here's the thing. You're not in the 14 Pac-12 anymore, friends, and you get to start your Miami season in the Swamp. This is another game where I'm just going to go with my gut in this one, okay? This is an environment that most of these Hurricanes have never been in, all right? They're used to playing in front of 10,000 fans at Hard Rock. This is 90-plus thousand and SEC talent, dude. ESPN Matchup Indicator gives the Gators a 57.5% chance at beating the Canes, but the Canes are 2.5-point favorites. Miami's going to have to show me, dude. I'm going with Florida in the Swamp, 27-24. I'm not saying that Miami's not going to have a good season, okay? But you're going to have to stink and show me before I start casting my chips in that direction, man. And that's a tough environment to start your season at. Give me the Florida Gators, 27-24. Next up, we got the Ohio Bobcats visiting the Syracuse Orange. Now, the MAC Offensive Player of the Year, quarterback Curtis Rourke, he leaves to Indiana from Ohio. Also leading rusher, Saya Bangura, who had 811 yards and 7 touchdowns. He leaves and goes to Minnesota. They also have to replace their 7 leading pass catchers in an offensive line that has to reset the entire left side. UCF transfer Parker Navarro, who was a dual threat quarterback, transfers over from UCF, obviously, but will be throwing to an inexperienced group of receivers. They do have redshirt freshman Ricky Hunt Jr., who scored 5 touchdowns in the Myrtle Beach Bowl last year, so he could be a bright spot in that offense. Now, defensive coordinator Spence Nowinski, he bolted for Memphis after leading the Bobcats to the nation's number 4 best statistically ranked defense, and the transfer portal killed the Bobcats on that side of the football. On the other side, Dino Babers is gone after 4 out of 5 losing seasons in his 8-year stint at Syracuse. He is replaced by Georgia defensive back coach Fran Brown, whose recruiting prowess has immediately been felt up there at Syracuse. The Qs had their first top 40 class since 2001, along with Ohio State transfer Kyle McCord. But will McCord be able to survive behind that just atrociously porous Syracuse offensive line? As a unit, they finished last season ranked 110th in the country, where none of their starters finished with a PFF grade of over 60. So keep that in the back of your stinking mind. The ESPN Matchup Indicator has the Qs with a 74.7% chance of beating the Bobcats, and they are currently 17.5-point favorites. Give me the Qs in this one, 35-17 to open the season 1-0. Next up, we got UC Davis. The Aggies going to face the Cal Berkeley Golden Bears. The Cal Bears start their season against FCS UC Davis. Justin Wilcox's team is usually fairly good on the defensive side of the football. And preseason All-ACC running back Jaden Ott returns to lead the team. We're not going to stink and go into the weeds in this one. ESPN Matchup Indicator gives the Bears a 93.2% chance of winning, and they are 20.5% favorites at their house. Give me the Cal Bears, 31, UC Davis, 14. Cal starts their ACC campaign, not an ACC play, but as a member of the ACC, 1-0 against the lower division opponent. Next up, the Richmond Spiders at the Virginia Cavaliers. We get a little trip down to Whoville to watch the Who's take on Richmond. Calandria was just named the starting quarterback over the more experienced and older Tony Muskett to start the season, which I think most people saw coming with how the two played last year when they both split 6 games apiece. Tony Elliott's going to try and improve on the fact that he's won just 3 games apiece in each year that he's been there, and your boy is still pissed at the fact that one of those wins in 2023 was to my Heels in Chapel Hill. Thanks, Tony, for ruining everything. UVA had the 3rd worst PFF pass blocking grade in all of college football last year. They also had the 5th lowest graded defensive line. Yikes. That tells you that there is a big problem in the trenches. They're going to have to do a lot better there. Malik Washington is gone to the NFL, but they return Malachi Fields, who had 811 receiving yards, plus they bring in Notre Dame transfer Chris Tyree. They will be too much for the Spiders, but don't expect this to be a stinking whooping. ESPN matchup indicator gives UVA a 91.9% chance of beating Richmond, and they are currently 18.5-point favorites. I'm going to say they win, but it's a little bit closer. Not a little bit, a lot of bit closer than the experts think. Give me Virginia 30-24. Next up, we got the Georgia State Panthers at the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Now, the Yellow Jackets are coming off of a huge season-opening win by upsetting the 10th-ranked Florida State Seminoles out in Ireland. And Brent Key put on a clinic for putting your pride aside and doing what works to win the football game. Tech is going to have to be on guard from a letdown after that emotional win over the Noles. But Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, and that dominant offensive line, they're going to end up getting the job done. Plus, that defense looked completely different in their first game under Santucci. ESPN matchup indicator gives the Jackets a 77.8% chance of winning this game, and they are currently 21.5-point favorites. Tech wins. But you know what? I think there's a little bit of a lull, man. They don't cover. Even the best of us would have a hard time fully moving on from that emotional win, all the traveling, etc. Give me Tech 38-20 over Georgia State. Next up, we got the Houston Christian Huskies visiting SMU. 8 p.m. on ACC Extra. The SMU Mustangs will get an absolute cupcake as the Huskies come to town. Now, Preston Stone turned it up in the fourth out there in Reno, but it was not his greatest outing, going 17 for 30, 254 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. RJ Maryland, however, balled out. Dude had 8 receptions, 162 yards, and 1 touchdown. Look for them to go to him often. Again, the dude's 6'3", 6'4", 233 pounds. Houston Christian is not going to have anyone that can cover that size. Very doubtful. ESPN matchup indicator gives SMU a 99% chance of winning this football game, and they roll SMU 48, Houston Christian 14. And last but not least, good night. There's so many stinking football games, man. Boston College versus Florida State in Tallahassee on Monday. Now, Florida State returns from Ireland. Tail between their legs. 0-1, 0-1 in the conference, and they can ill afford to go and drop their first 2 conference games. It will be hell in Tally, especially as many peg them as the ACC frontrunners. They're already kind of in an uphill battle off the jump. Well, in comes Bill O'Brien and Thomas Castellanos to test the waters. Look, man, Castellanos is a dangerous dual-threat guy, and he can really hurt you with his legs. The question is, will he be able to generate enough offense and cut down on the turnovers? Last year, he gave the Noles all kinds of stinking fits, man. 20 for 33, 305 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 95 yards rushing with a touchdown on the ground. That's 400 yards of total offense in a 31-29 defeat that they were up in. Truth be told, man, BC had every reason in the world to win that stinking football game, and they dropped it. Can he work that magic again away from home down in Tallahassee? Now, obviously, Florida State coming off that heartbreaking loss to Georgia Tech. All right, and many Noles fans are already throwing their hands up in the air saying that the season is over. DJU was touchdownless against one of the statistical worst teams in the country last year on defense with 200 yards of total offense. What happens if this dude puts back-to-back pedestrian games together like that? They're going to riot in Tallahassee. The ESPN matchup predictor gives the Noles an 81.3% chance of winning this game, and they are currently 16-point favorites. I think BC stays around for a little bit. Maybe not as close as last year, but I think BC plays FSU tough, man, and people are seriously starting to ask themselves if Florida State is nearly as good as they thought. Give me the Noles 31-23 over Boston College to wrap up week 1 in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So that's going to wrap it up. Once again, State over West Carolina, Wake Forest over A&T, North Carolina over Minnesota, Duke over Elon, TCU over Stanford, Georgia over Clemson, Virginia Tech over Vandy, Louisville over Austin Peay, Pitt over Kent State, the Florida Gators over the number 19 Miami Hurricanes in the Swamp, Q's over Ohio, Cal over UC Davis, UVA over Richmond, Georgia Tech over Georgia State, SMU over Houston Christian, and Florida State over Boston College. So let me know what you think, ACC football family, down in the comments section. And do me a solid, like I already said, man. Like, share, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you when we talk about the results of this thing on Sunday, baby.